Welcome back to Son of Chelsea. Daniel Childs here again. Hope you're doing really well on this Monday. In today's news show, we're going to be mainly focusing on all of the most recent striker chat. We know that Chelsea are focused on trying to sign a new centre forward this summer. Who will be that new striker? We've been talking a lot about Liam Delap, but some reports have come out today suggesting Delap may be going somewhere else. So then naturally that leads us to think, well, who else is out there? Who is going to be the main target Chelsea are going to try and go after? And of course, the impact that getting or not getting Champions League football could mean for that. So we're going to delve into that. I'll give you my thoughts and feelings as usual. Please like, subscribe. If you're new around here, a Chelsea fan, want to get the latest Chelsea content, please do follow along. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the content. If you haven't already checked out my thoughts, my extensive thoughts on the Newcastle defeat, please go and check that out now. If you're listening on the podcast, if you're on YouTube, it's the latest on the podcast feed and also the YouTube channel. So go and check that out. But Liam Delap, let's start off with Liam Delap. So Liam Delap has been a name that's been linked to Chelsea basically since the start of this season. It really heated up during the January transfer window. It's heated up since. And I think I even put in one of my predictions that I felt that Liam Delap for the year would sign for Chelsea. Because Chelsea's extensive history already with this sporting director crew under this ownership of signing players who have had previous at Manchester City, not just players, coaches, Enzo Maresca, Cole Palmer, Romeo Lavia, Tosin Adarabioyo. The list, I think, will only continue to grow. And of course, Liam Delap is a part of that list. And because of the very low 30 million release clause, even if you think Liam Delap is not the big name first choice striker Chelsea need, adding goals, Premier League goals to this team is obviously important. And when you look at what Liam Delap has done with a team like Ipswich, I think the numbers and his profile and what could be there for him to grow into, I think there's a lot to like about Liam Delap as a centre forward. As I say, maybe not what Chelsea desire to go from a Jackson type of centre forward, which we're going to delve into a little bit, to your next level, someone who is really going to elevate this attack to the next level. However, I don't think it would have been a bad signing. But it seems like Manchester United are optimistic of signing Liam Delap if, and this is the big if they win the UEFA Europa League against Spurs. I think it's next week, isn't it? The Europa League final. And Ben Jacobs, this is originally came out from Alex Crook of TalkSport, but Ben Jacobs reporting it as well here that Chelsea, along with United, are the two leading clubs in the Premier League triggering and considering triggering Delap's 30 million release clause, which is active now. Ipswich have been relegated. Delap is apparently waiting to see who gets what at the end of the season, but Man United have made a strong pitch already. He is the number one striker target, and United have the financial means to both sign Liam Delap and Matthias Cunha early in the window if they can reach an agreement for both players. Though apparently Chelsea have a number of striker options, with Delap well known to Enzo Maresca and Chelsea's recruitment team. Delap apparently wants to make a decision before he leaves for the under-21 European Championship. So a bit like Chelsea, same for both Chelsea and Man United, right? They need Champions League football to secure their biggest targets, and Delap is maybe waiting for a Champions League club. Now, not entirely sure about that, because what happens if both Man United and Chelsea fail to get Champions League football? There still could be a reality where Delap goes to one of those teams, because it is still a major upgrade compared to who he was playing for last season. So I don't, especially for 30 million, I don't necessarily think that's the end game for Delap. It's just the potential that he's got a team that could get into the Champions League spots. And of course, with Man United putting, for all we can laugh and joke and mock about Man United, going out there and signing Matthias Cunha and Liam Delap is not a bad start to a window. If you're going to sign two new centre forwards, it's a big indictment on Joshua Zirkzee and Rasmus Højlund in terms of their recent striker business. But obviously not entirely sure on Delap, but is that a negative really? If I say to you now, Chelsea are only going to sign one centre forward this summer, Delap is the only one you're getting, I think that would underwhelm a lot of people, I have to say. And especially based on what took place at St James's Park and the reactions to that, which I think we should get into now. I spoke about it extensively on my review. People want the big name striker. They always do, or at least what they want. I think the big name striker makes it seem like it's really shallow, and it's just about, oh, I know this name. I think what people, to kind of boil it all down, no matter what name you throw out, is a level of player who is either in their prime, is hitting their prime, who can quickly come in and elevate the attack and produce on a consistent basis. It seems simple, it seems obvious, but it's something that Chelsea's transfer business just simply has not got right. I said it in my review of Newcastle. It is ridiculous the number of players Chelsea have signed, the amount they have spent, and not having a centre forward who is anywhere close to the level of even Alexander Isak, who I think is brilliant for Newcastle. Anywhere close to, of course, Erling Haaland, anywhere close to some of the best strikers in European football, even someone like Ollie Watkins, who I think is still a little bit underrated, scored a big goal for Aston Villa at the weekend, isn't deemed one of the best centre forwards right now in the Premier League, could become one of the best centre forwards, which is what I think Jackson, based on what he started his Chelsea career, but he's obviously not that at the moment. So Simon Johnson wrote about this today, and he said that Jackson's indiscretion underlines why Chelsea need a summer upgrade. Jackson scored 14 goals in 35 league appearances in his debut year and will now finish this one with just 10 from 30, so obviously a downgrade. Teams who win the Premier League titles often have a player who gets them 24 goals and more in one season, not 2, which obviously has been the problem. It is no secret apparently that Chelsea are looking to buy a striker, and then Simon Johnson lists the names here, including Benjamin Sesko from RB Leipzig, Liam Delap, and Hugo Ekitike from Eintracht Frankfurt. I wanted to look at these names. We've talked a lot about Delap. I wrote an extensive piece on my Substack about why I thought Delap would be a decent signing for Chelsea. So you can go and read that. We've spoken a lot about Delap, but I just wanted to do kind of just a broad comparison between Benjamin Cesco, Ekitike, and Nicholas Jackson, specifically from this season, using data MB here. So just looking at both players. Jackson firstly versus Cesco. If you look at their age, Cesco is 2 years younger than Nicholas Jackson, so again it would be signing a young centre forward, but Cesco has obviously been around for a bit now. His profile in European football has been elevated. He's been a consistent name linked with Arsenal and other big European clubs. Aerial, he's much more dominant aerially, which is a real problem for Nicholas Jackson. You think about the number of crosses that have gone into the box for Chelsea and no one's capitalised on them. 92.1% percentile compared to Jackson's 51. Non-penalty goals, Cesco's better there, 67. In terms of Jackson's a bit more of a creative player, 59 compared to Cesco's 44. Attacking actions, pretty similar there. Minutes played, again, quite similar. A bit more for Benjamin Cesco, but in terms of, Jackson was out for a substantial period of time. It's not exactly ridiculous, the discrepancy there. So it leads you to think that, Cesco has a lot of good attributes and is someone that maybe absolutely could go on to the next level. I just want to say with Benjamin Cesco, because I know many people bring up his name and bring up why he'd be an outstanding player for Chelsea and also what he's done previous to this season. It's not just this season. But I was quite surprised, despite the hype, only 13 Bundesliga goals this year. So that's only 3 more league goals than Jackson has in the Premier League. And, it's not exactly an outstanding season. And I'll get back to the Bundesliga of this all. Now, maybe you throw in the context that Leipzig are not doing as well in the Bundesliga this year. They're 7th, which is pretty low considering their recent results in the Bundesliga. He has scored 8 goals in the Champions League this year, which is a pretty good return. Ekitike, who's another player that many people are excited about, 22 years old, so 1 year younger than Nicholas Jackson. Again, a younger profile of signing. We're not talking about a Victor Gyökeres, 27, slap bang in their prime. Victor Osimhen, slap bang in their prime. We're talking about someone who, again, very much fits the mould of Chelsea signings. 15 Bundesliga goals this year for Frankfurt, 2 more than Benjamin Cesco. Again, if you look at his aerial prowess, a little bit better, not as good as Benjamin Cesco. Non-penalty goals, he's a lot better than Jackson, 86%. In terms of expected assists, he's a lot more of a creative player, 92.5 there, and attacking actions, 94.4. And minutes played, he has about, just again, similar 200 minutes more than Nicholas Jackson. Again, you have to factor in that Jackson missed a substantial period through injury. But in both of these cases, when you look at those two graphs, they signal the fact that Ekitike is more of a creative player on that sense than Cesco, who is kind of more of your kind of standard centre forward finisher. Again, it's what you prefer. Are you looking for a centre forward who's going to do more than just be that kind of focal point presence, who will be dominant inside the box? You can play crosses into him, but maybe from a creative aspect, there's still things to work on there. That is one of the things that people have been positive about Jackson. He, at his best, he is an all-round player as well in terms of bringing others into play, working well with, say, a player like Cole Palmer, and maybe not always being the finisher, but adds a lot to Chelsea's game off the ball as well, work rate. I think that's something you have to factor in for a striker at this level. But there is an undeniable thing that I know you're all thinking. We're talking about two Bundesliga players here. And what happens when we talk about Bundesliga players? Several names come up in our mind, and not for great reasons. I know Kai Havertz scored the winning goal in the Champions League final. That should never be forgotten. But as an overall signing, it didn't exactly go to plan. Timo Werner was a complete disaster. Let's be honest about that. And everything that's happened since has not exactly made Chelsea look silly. And of course, Nkunku this year came from Leipzig as well. And Nkunku's a weirder one for me. I think there is some broader context there in terms of we signed him so long ago. He had an injury for a year. It seems like Maresca and the club were not that serious about him after that. I mean, and then obviously individually, I think he's massively failed and let down not only his teammates, but I think himself in terms of his reputation. So a weird one with Nkunku, but there is a growing narrative of like that transition from the Bundesliga to the Premier League that has been problematic, and Chelsea have fallen victim, or at least fallen foul, or done something wrong in terms of recruitment, obviously, of going to a league that stylistically just doesn't suit our style of play. And it's not just about the Premier League style of play, it's also Chelsea's style of play. Werner is the classic one. You take him from a team where he has played transitional football, on the shoulder, played in a system where he's able to play as a second striker, to a system where we don't really play with a second striker. We play much more with a lot more slow possession, and him as an individual technically got exposed. That is the big concern when you're signing not just Bundesliga players. I mean, Bundesliga is quite unique in the sense that it is high octane, it is high tempo. You see a lot of transitions in that league. I always think back to the comps years ago of Jadon Sancho and how many of the goals for Borussia Dortmund were him running into space. Obviously in the Premier League, for a club like Chelsea, you just don't get that much freedom as you do in the Bundesliga. I don't just want to say that means it's the end of the world and you can never sign a good player from the Bundesliga again. I've made this comparison before because then you effectively rule yourself out of all of these names, right? If you go with the logic that Sesko and Ekitike are not good enough because how can you trust them from the Bundesliga? Surely then Victor Gyökeres is not good enough from the Portuguese league. Surely then Victor Osimhen is not good enough because of the Italian league. If you run down Serie A, if you run down the Turkish league, you end up signing absolutely no one. And, Diego Costa was a freak of nature, but he did come from La Liga, a league again where you could argue, and people did literally at the time argue, that was not a good profile fit for Chelsea. It was one of the greatest profile fits we've ever seen in the history of Chelsea Football Club. So I don't just want to, and the positives of Jackson, undeniably, Nicholas Jackson has, I think, shown some good performances for Chelsea. So it's more just a case of looking at what this team, I think, profile-wise needs. Now, I do want more experience in this team. I do think Victor Gyökeres, as a 27-year-old, as someone who is literally in the prime of their career, has done a lot in their career, has been round, has had a lot of ups and downs, has had to really mature as a player. I think as a character is maybe at that point where he is ready to go somewhere, be the superstar, and maybe psychologically as a character can take that. I do slightly worry with younger players that you bring them into an environment where a lot of pressure is going to be put on their shoulders very early on. And with any of these names, it's not going to be a Jackson scenario where you're going to sign him for 35 million. You're going to be signing upwards 50 plus effectively. And look at the failure of Rasmus Højlund right at Man United. There is a lot more pressure that's going to be put on the shoulders of this player this summer. So I think that is something you have to factor into with these signings. It's not just a simple plug and play. This guy looks good in a comp, so automatically he must be great for Chelsea. No, it's about the style you're playing. It's about what you want from that centre forward. As I say, if we look at the way the centre forwards have been used this year, I think you want them to be involved in build up, but especially the way we cross the ball so much, I think you have to have someone more aerially dominant. That's just obvious to me, because even if you swap out Jadon Sancho for someone else as a wide player, we've got to do a lot better with our centre forward as an aerial threat, because quite simply that's the way we're playing and looking to attack at the moment. Could we vary up? Absolutely. But if that's the way we're going to play, especially against deeper defences, and you have a more dominant aerial threat inside the box, that's hopefully going to improve Chelsea's attacking end product in the long term. So I want to hear your thoughts. Like, I don't think many people will feel like it's the end of the world if we lose out on Delap. The one thing I will say about Delap, I just don't think it's a great reflection on the sporting directors that they've had these previous connections to Manchester-based players, basically, or Manchester City players, and they've put so much groundwork in, and it looks like they could once again miss out on a player, with reports suggesting that again it's a case of Chelsea and Chelsea sporting directors not selling the club properly and not being able to get these deals over the line. It's a consistent trend. I put this out on X, but I'll say it here in front of camera. I get people defending Enzo Maresca. I get people defending the players. I don't know how people defend the sporting directors with a straight face. I think they have so far fallen foul of, just incompetence, of not operating in a serious manner, of failing to do the job, given the sheer extent of finance they have been given to orchestrate and build such a better squad than they have. And that's my huge concern, is I think a lot of people, we all look at these names and we theoretically, think about what they could do at Chelsea. I think that's fun. That's interesting. That's what we like to do here. But are any of these cool, exciting names actually going to come to Chelsea with the way we operate with our sporting directors currently? That is something that I never had concerns about before. I never had concerns about, even despite all the criticism of Marina Granovskaya and Scott McLaughlin as a scout and, the later years of Roman, which did, have a lot of bad signings within there. I'm not saying they didn't, but looking at last summer, looking at January, I mean, I have to see evidence that we are operating in a much shrewder way and capacity to actually get serious deals over the line, because that is what you're going to have to do. If Chelsea get Champions League football, which we hope they do, finish the job, great. You get more finance in. Then you have to act seriously. You have to give Enzo Maresca or any coach serious players to actually improve the end product of this team. And I'm not just talking about centre forward. You've got to look central defence. You've got to look especially in goalkeeper. Both ends of the pitch. We've got to be acting way more seriously. So are you someone that looks at any of these names and think, yeah, that's the guy I really want? Are there other names I'm not talking about? Victor Osimhen, just, because we haven't talked about him that much, seems to be a financial thing, that his wages are just absolutely insane and Chelsea are not going to go anywhere near that. But, Victor Osimhen, I think in some ways would be a good addition to Chelsea. Hopefully, and again, Lukaku, it's no signing. I can't sit here and tell you any signing is a guarantee. I can't give you that based on everything I've seen in football, right? However, I do think if we're just talking about what this Chelsea side lacks, what it lacked on Sunday with Nicholas Jackson being the worst thing in terms of someone serious as a centre forward, leading you and actually costing you big time. I think Osimhen, obviously, as a finisher, hopefully would provide that for Chelsea. But I can't see them going near that, even though they seemed to do last summer. So those are my thoughts, feelings. Let me know yours as ever in the comments below. We'll be back very soon. We'll be looking ahead to the Man United game. I'll probably respond to some of your comments because I know you guys like that sort of content where I do take your comments and we talk about them. So stay tuned for all of that. Follow me across the socials at SonOfChelsea, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.